Welcome to another episode of The Art of Tech, podcast for teachers who can't tech good and want to learn to do other stuff good too. I'm your co-host, Cassandra Smith, EdTech Coordinator for Battleground Public Schools. It is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and we are in our second episode for the cybersecurity theme. And I am joined by my co-host, Scott McDaniel, our lovely tech director.
Hi, everyone. And also with us is Ian Moore from CISA with Homeland Security. And Ian was with us last week, which we, of course, filmed last week and not this week, even though we are wearing the exact same clothes.
Which you can't tell
Which
if you're
you can't
tuning
tell
in.
if you're just listening, but maybe you can, and if you can, you're really quite amazing. I would really like to meet you because that would be awesome.
But if you are watching on YouTube, you will be able to tell.
And now they're going to want to tune into YouTube.
There you go.
The link would be in
that
the notes to
subscribe
this. Please, smash that subscribe button if you haven't already. Ian, a lot of people, and honestly, a few years ago, I could have counted myself one of them, at least to a small degree. A lot of people don't think that school districts are really that much at risk. You know what? We don't make millions of dollars, for instance. So, are schools really at risk?
Yes, actually. The biggest issue we see with school districts is the data. Because you're dealing with very sensitive data, not just PII type data, privacy information, but also their school records, which honestly, some of that stuff, if it got out, could be really damaging. And so what attackers go after, when they go after schools, they don't really care about the money. They're going to do something with your data to then extort you somehow, whether threaten to encrypt your data, threaten to release it, or actually we've seen them go after people individually in the data themselves to say, hey, I had all of your data, you need to pay me or I'm going to release it. So it's all about the data,
Okay.
not necessarily the profit. But they're still in it to get money, one way or another. And it's still a crime.
All right. Do we, I'll just ask from, I would say do school districts and small organizations, do they face the same kind of risks? But really I just care about school districts because that's who we are. Do we have the same kind of risks then as like a big company?
Yes. Yes, we talked last week about the attack surface.
Okay.
Corporations that have multiple connections to the internet probably have more of an attack surface than a school district.
Right.
In a school district, you try to control all of the points that students and teachers and administrators can get out to the internet.
Right.
And hopefully you put tools in place and defenses to make sure data keeps flowing, but the wrong data isn't coming in or going out.
Right.
So you are at risk, not as much as a corporation per se, but it's all based on size. So an attacker doesn't see you that much different. In fact, their scanning tools that they use, all they're seeing is IP ranges, and they're scanning it with vulnerability scanners and software scanners and things like that. They have no idea what they're scanning most of the time until they dig in and actually do the research on those IP ranges.
Okay. So they're just trying to find a network.
Yep.
And any network will do.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes what they'll do is they'll do their research and figure out, oh, this is a really, really small school district that may or may not have insurance.
Right.
Because what we found out is most of the time they know exactly how much the insurance will pay because a lot of that's public.
Right. Especially with the public entity.
Yeah.
A lot of our information is public.
Even corporations.
Really?
Somehow they've been able to figure out, probably through social engineering, how much their insurance policies are. And so basically they extort them for those exact amounts. And we're like, they're doing something right. I mean, their business plan is solid, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, for a school district, like I said, so much of our information is public, and it's really easy to figure out like who are the top players, if you will, in administration. You know, who are the people that work in the business office? What are their names? You know, how long have they been there? How long have they been in the school district? All of that information's out there.
Yep.
You know, it's published countless times. There's just not a lot that's private. So can you walk us through like I know you can't share specific details about any things that you've heard or seen or companies you work with, but can you walk us through like a real life scenario?
Sure. So, like I said previous, the attackers will do a level of scanning to figure out if there's stuff they can do automatically.
Right.
But most of the time, to get that initial foothold, they're going to do their research on certain people within certain positions. A lot of times, leadership tend to not be as technical, so they're not as aware of the risks. And so they target those primarily, but there's also financial and other organizations within the organization that they target. So they're going to try to intercept some emails through rogue access points or things like that, or rogue emails. And some people actually sell their emails from their corporation to try to make some money. Well, when they figure out,
that's horrible.
It is, because they don't realize what they're doing.
Right.
So when the attacker sees kind of the structure and the people and maybe has some emails, they'll try to replicate either a good email that people already trust, or try to come up with their own of some sort of transaction that will motivate people to click on a link or click on an attachment. Through that process, what happens is the malware may not show anything on the screen. In fact, if you clicked on a link, it may open up a blank page that may give you a fake error to say, oh, you can't get to this because you don't have permission or whatever. Right. But in the background, the script is running. Downloading, uploading, whatever, opening up a web shell, which is another way hackers use to get backdoors behind the OS. Then it may sit there for weeks, just collecting data and sending it off to kind of set the stage. The attacker wants to learn as much as they can about the environment to figure out, okay, what type of ransomware do I need to use? Right. One that can do 100 devices or one that can do 10,000 devices. Plus also, are there servers that I can access just directly that I maybe don't need to encrypt yet, or maybe I can pull data directly. What can I do? So they move laterally, they move out, they try to increase their permissions. So they'll either copy password hashes and try to crack those so they can increase their levels of permissions, and then gain admin access to devices or servers, things like that. And they work out into their network. And then I guess when the time is right, they execute the ransomware.
So it's like an invasion.
It is.
So when we were first struck by the pandemic, there was a lot of reports about increases in cyber criminals phishing through COVID-themed scans. Are those still happening?
I'm going to say yes, but not anywhere as they were, because people were scared. People were trying to get as much information that they hoped was legit,
right, so
they can make decisions daily on what was going on. Where to find, masks, the N95 mask. Where to find real stuff. Right. And sometimes people will send out emails saying, "Hey, I've got a stockpile of these, and I'm going to sell them. Click on this link." So, anytime there's something like that that's that's in demand, attackers will cling to that and create their campaign around that.
Or an emotional tie, especially with COVID.
Yep.
I mean, there was fear, there was a lot of trepidation, a lot of anxiety.
Mhm.
So, I mean, it stands to reason that anything that has those kind of elements to it, that there's an emotional or a high interest, you know, whatever's in the news
Yeah.
currently.
Yeah.
So we could see a lot of topics coming out of Russia, Ukraine,
Yes,
that are going to
constantly.
get attention.
Yeah. So a funny one is the Free Britney. Remember when she was
yeah.
going through her
Yeah.
thing?
So
Yeah.
the people asking
We
for responses.
as soon as it hit social media, we immediately saw attacks where people were like, "Yeah, sign my petition to free Britney. We're getting 500,000
Wow.
signatures." And malware was just shooting out the door because people were like, "Yeah, support Britney." So any time there's something like that that's bigger than life
Mhm.
in social media, the attackers are gonna grab onto, and they're gonna
Makes
put
sense.
phishing emails related to that. Unfortunately, kids are all up in social media, and they'll jump on the chance.
Mhm.
Yes, we do. We do like our popular culture, I think.
Mhm.
So there still are a lot of people that don't take cybersecurity very important, or don't take it very seriously, I guess I should say. How do you change their attitudes?
Well, gosh. Unfortunately, the best way to affect change is for an actual event to happen.
Mhm.
We see that in the real world. We see that in you know scenarios when we do tabletop exercises. We go through something that's really crazy negative, crazy bad. People get their feelings hurt, and you're like, oh yeah, we have to change our policy for that stuff. Nobody wants to go through a ransomware attack.
I don't.
But the best thing for an organization is to go through a ransomware attack if they don't have the things in place to protect them from the ransomware attack. Training. Both training where you send people to classes, but also awareness training, online stuff, is just to constantly beat that drum. We talk about it all the time, that that's the weakest part of our society when it comes to cybersecurity, because we still have free will. We can still click on the stupid link and
Mhm.
attachment.
Yeah.
And so we have to make it hard for people, and make it scary for people, and get them to think, oh, this could be the worst thing I do today.
Yeah.
Or this week, or this month.
This could be the worst thing I've done in a very long time.
Mhm.
And yeah, I don't, it's, in all fairness, some of these attacks are really, really good. And if the timing's right, you've just been dealing with a certain topic, and then coincidentally, or not coincidentally, you get an email and it seems related to that, you're like, oh, and you have to stop yourself when you get that click itch and want to hit the button and go, is this really legit? Let's stop and think about this. And everybody's in a hurry and they just want to get stuff done, so they like click, get stuff done. I got a class to teach. I've got kids coming in. I've got evaluations to do, whatever the case may be. But so what do you see as the key trends in cybersecurity over the next 5 years? Can you see the future?
I can't yet, but I'm working on it.
Okay.
My Jedi training, it's not working. I think we're going to transition out of phishing, because I think people are going to start to get it, and our tools will get better. But there's going to be more focused social engineering, targeted, and then we're going to put things in place to help that, but it's going to be so specific. And I believe, so like right now, you can't like your tools, people ask, how come my tools didn't detect the phishing email?
Right. We get asked that.
Yep.
And it's because you clicked on it.
Yeah.
But they're like, how come it even got to me? Well, because it's not malware.
Yeah.
And because you don't have that detonation chamber to actually execute it
Right.
ahead of time. So I think our tools will get better at some of that stuff to prevent the emails from actually even getting to our people.
Right.
I think there's going to be more artificial intelligence, machine learning applied. So that's, kids, that's another area that if you want to be very successful, get into artificial intelligence, machine learning.
Yeah.
And that you do have to be really smart in math. Just saying. But it's lucrative. There's so much to be made. Anyways, because what you're going to see is the systems are going to use models of data to help them answer questions ahead of time before the human gets involved.
Right.
And that by creating a tool, a defensive tool that uses that, it'll know, oh, any attachment that has this extension or has this type or is doing this sort of behavior before it even gets to a human, we're gonna do something with it, and it may never get there. Now the hackers are gonna try to get around that, and we'll work through that. But over the next 5 years, I think it's gonna be more advanced because the attackers are using artificial intelligence also. They're using it not only to target people, certain people that are based on their susceptibility to click on links. They can capture that data, or kind of what they do, or maybe their different organizations they've worked in might give them kind of a profile to be more risky in their behavior.
Right.
So they might be able to leverage that, take advantage of that. So there's a lot of psychology that works in with this also. But really, the big picture, I think it's going to be more advanced technology, and it's going to be just harder for us defenders. But I'll have a job for a long time.
You'll have a job for a long time.
It's not going away.
They're not going to let you retire.
Unless there's a global EMP, I'll have a job.
And then, what do you, I mean, we talk about it a lot. I feel like we say the same things. The key challenges in cybersecurity, to me, from what you said last week, from what you said this week, is awareness and education, and stopping the behaviors that we have now. Does that seem legit? Is that accurate?
Yeah. Stopping the behaviors is the key, and doing everything you can ahead of that so that they don't have to worry about their behavior. But instead you're only giving them a few choices of behavior.
Okay.
You're not letting them be fully open to be able to click on the link. So
Right. So it's a mix of technological safeguards and human safeguards.
Yep.
So, I've been talking about cybersecurity a lot with coworkers, with colleagues, sending information out. And, even before that, I've heard people make comments like, let them have my stuff. I don't have anything to hide. There's nothing I do that's that secret. How do you respond to that?
Well, interestingly, if you have, say you have a piece of malware that's considered a bot or a robot on the internet on your device, and it does something criminal, you could be held liable. So
there's that.
Right now, I think the laws are at the corporate level, and they're working through some of that. But imagine you don't put any security on your computer, and you go to a site that you think is safe because of Google, and you download malware not knowing, because it doesn't do anything to your computer directly, but it then sends itself out to other computers as basically robots, as bots for the attacker that's controlling all of these. And now they can run additional phishing campaigns, they can run additional malware campaigns, they can do denial of service attacks on their targets that they rent these out for. So on the dark web, you can actually rent out a 10,000 bot network to do a denial of service on whoever you want.
And so a denial of service is when a lot of computers essentially attack a location to try and take it offline.
They're not really attacking.
Okay.
So in computer language, they're doing an acknowledge or a reset type packet.
Right.
And if you have 10,000 requests for a connection packet, and then there's not the follow-up packet, that once they respond, there's not a follow-up, it's waiting, and it keeps that request kind of listening out there, and they're like, okay, come on, okay, well now I got another one, and now I got another one, and 10,000 of these. Well, eventually you'll jam up the processor because it's waiting for all of these responses from the organizations that are requesting connection.
So it'd be like saying to somebody, hey, what's your name? And you respond back, my name's Scott, what's yours? And you never get an answer, but you keep getting asked the same question.
Yes.
Sort of an analogy.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. That would be bothersome.
Because the TCP, I'm not going to go into it. Basically, it's expecting that response.
Yeah.
Just like human communication.
Yeah.
Because the way connections are made through browsers on the internet is you have to have that in order to trust that connection, so
Right.
that data can flow properly. And when it's jammed up like that, you can't, the server that's trying to receive this information can't do anything else. And that's a denial of service. But it's not necessarily attacking the way we think of like a hacker going in and trying to break stuff. You're just making it so they can't do their job,
Right.
even though it's a complete function of what it's supposed to do.
So you did throw out a phrase, dark web, and we like to joke that the dark web is when you hit the next page on a Google search. Go to the second. And so, because nobody ever does that. Nobody goes to the second page of results. It's the first one. You might skip the ones that are promoted, but the rest are the legit stuff. That's it. You know, everything else is fluff. But so, what's the dark web?
Oh boy.
This is scary. In a nutshell, 'cause I mean, it's a big topic.
In a nutshell, so the internet is the top of an iceberg. Right below that, underwater, you have kind of government networks. But the 80% that's below that is the dark web. And it's where criminal activity, to include buying and selling things that are, you would only previously, 20, 30 years ago, you would say you can only buy that on the black market, just the way it was. The dark web has become the internet's black market. They don't use normal routing protocols, and on purpose, because then they would be able to be tracked and
Right.
they would be prosecuted. The dark web is unfortunately subjectively an evil place. It's where, well, I can stand on a few soapboxes with that from my experience.
It's not the kind
in
of place
military.
you want to go stopping and smelling the roses.
No.
And you wouldn't just stumble there.
No,
Yeah.
no, you have to have a special browser, and you have to know exactly what the address is within that environment, because you can't just Google for those sites.
Right.
Um,
Wow. Well, once again, Ian, I really want to thank you for coming down. I appreciate all the help you've given us already in the school district, but we're doing everything we can for Cybersecurity Awareness Month, which is these podcasts that we're doing over the course of October are focused on. Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Is it?
It is. It is totally an honor to be asked to do this. So I get the job that I get to talk to people about cybersecurity, something I love. And I'm the state coordinator for Washington State. I'm from here. I was born here. I went to college here. And I love it. And I love being able to support, from the small town in eastern Washington all the way up to the governor and everybody in between. And so yes, I am truly honored to be here.
Nice. We do appreciate it.
Thank you.
And then just to close, this is the Art of Tech.
Podcast for teachers who can't tech good and want to learn to do other stuff good too.
All right, don't forget that swag is still out there if you know where that title comes from.
Yes.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.